This is Part 2 Episode 125. This was the first time Long Houchen brought out the divine snail shield of sun and moon in real battle, and undoubtedly, the results were top-notch. Right at this moment, under the lead of the Fiend commander of the 8th step, the Fiend team also arrived. The purity and the force of the light essence released from Yating's body shocked all the demons present, or rather birthed fear. This total accumulation of spiritual energy produced terrible fluctuations that could burst at any time, making all the demons with least bit of intelligence to feel its threat. For this reason, a Fiend commander of the 8th step was dispatched. After all, the Fiend king at the 9th step wouldn't go act personally. The Fiend commander didn't have his brothers launch a probing attack first. His perception being the greatest, his sense of urgency was just as great. The dark red heavy sword in his hand drew a large curve, aiming straight at Long Houchen's shield wall. Bang! With a dark red light flowing all over the place, terrible fluctuations of spiritual energy burst out, crushing all the vegetation in the surrounding 100 square meters, as the terrible darkness element energy even made it so that those grand fiends didn't dare get close. However, the Fiend commander's attacks were futile. Inside the shield wall, Long Houchen was entirely covered in golden, and the spiritual energy released by Yating instead became even more fragrant, this being precisely the bright vengeance following divine obstruction. The combination of shield wall with divine obstruction formed the most complete defense for a guardian knight to protect his comrades and himself. Moreover, Long Houchen was using the epic tier equipment divine snail shield of sun and moon. Long Houchen was now already at the 7th step of cultivation, but when fighting head-on, he had the strength to confront a powerhouse of the 8th step. Originally, the reason why the battle that he fought with Arbao was so disadvantageous was that his cultivation was really too inferior, thus why he suffered such a loss. The Fiend commander's attack being parried, his body was repelled before falling to the ground. The shield's repelling force wasn't so great, but it still astonished him, letting him feel the great defensive strength of the item. At this time, the Grand Fiends were already surrounding him, and without need for any order, they jointly attacked him from all directions. The divine snail shield of sun and moon started to look like a lofty mountain, unyielding no matter which attack came. Of course, Long Houchen's spiritual energy was still consumed to some extent against such series of attacks, but epic tier equipment nonetheless deserved their reputation. The divine snail shield of sun and moon had only one ability, and that was defense. Its consumption of Long Houchen's spiritual energy was especially negligible. If the situation remained this way, resisting the attacks of these grand fiends for several hours was no issue. The Fiend commander snarled to the sky, directing his heavy sword at the direction of the sky. Letting out glints of red light, it reverberated with a loud sound. The red light rose up, and in the process, rapidly raged toward the opposite direction. This was a signal to the rest of the army that the enemy they encountered was hard to handle. Immediately, the Fiend commander started to wield his sword with two hands, letting a strong darkness attribute spread out from it. Then his underlings grand fiends gathered behind him, forming a row, one after another. This seemed like the co-joined spiritual gathering ability prided by the Fiend clan. In fact, it was originally by researching the crystals from the Fiend clan that Lin Xin had created the co-joined spiritual pills. Immediately, the strength of the Fiend commander started increasing severalfold. Waves of darkness spiritual energy bubbled forth, and the darkness sword in his hands glowed in an increasingly intense light, gradually becoming covered in dark flames, extending over 30 meters in range. A really terrible sight. Long Houchen was extremely calm. He understood clearly that even if this Fiend commander had the co-joined boost from his underlings, his total cultivation won't possibly be boosted break through the 9th step from that. The 9th step is after all a massive bottleneck, that even Andromalius couldn't pass even through the means of something as majestic as a demon god pillar. Therefore, his next attack would at most reach the boundary of the 8th step. The divine snail shield of sun and moon combined both shield wall and divine obstruction, giving Long Houchen the certainty of being able to block the next strike. During this entanglement, Long Houchen could clearly sense that Yating's spell was about to be complete. A dark red fire suddenly lit up, taking the shape of a gigantic edge of blade, rushing over while producing thundering blast sounds. Tearing up a large area of air, its terrible fluctuations of spiritual energy caused the ground under Long Houchen and Yating to sink. Rumble, a gigantic dark red blade of light ferociously struck that orange-colored shield, letting place to a shocking scene. An orange and dark red ring spread out, and a languid dragon cry could be heard from the sky. All the fiends behind the Fiend Commander instantly fell on the ground, from the massive shock that spread from his attack. The Fiend Commander was also blown 7 steps back. His 2 hands holding his sword were also numb. No matter what, he was unable to imagine how it could be that his attack, that reached the peak of the 8th step, was still be unable to break through the opponent's defense. And the next instant, he found out that brilliant fireworks were starting to soar. Series of golden light was surging, bringing about a dazzling and incomparably thick light element in the air. Every bolt of golden light that ascended expanded at monstrous speed, to the extent that even as it gained altitude very quickly, it didn't seem any smaller. With a flash of golden light, Yating disappeared in Long Houchen's chest, her spell having finished, without even the energy left to witness the results of her magic. The orange-colored light vanished, as Long Houchen swept a cold glance at that Fiend Commander. Flapping the 4 wings on his back, his figure flashed, immediately fleeing afar. The Fiend Commander obviously was unwilling to let go of him like that. With a hiss, he promptly chased after him using his enormous fiendish wings. Although Long Houchen had repelled the opponent with his previous attack, he wasn't any better off either. After all, that blow was at the peak of the 8th step. But still, thanks to the toughness of the divine snail shield of sun and moon and its joint use with divine obstruction, Long Houchen didn't receive much damage. However, this consumed a good amount of his spiritual energy. The previous attack caused the remaining amount of Long Houchen's spiritual energy to plummet abruptly. As the time he spent using it increased, Long Houchen's understanding of the shield also went up. He also came to grasp the ability of this shield. Even if his spiritual energy was nearly exhausted at this point, the enemy could not inflict him the slightest bit of damage. However, the current situation meant he was clearly not fit to go handle that Fiend Commander. He still had to provide support to the 9th Holy Guard, and don't forget that a large portion of his spiritual energy had already been consumed by Yating's spell. Choosing to face the enemy in such circumstances, when considering that their reinforcements weren't present nearby, would simply be stupid. Having a total of 4 wings made him only faster. Although his cultivation didn't match the enemy, Long Houchen was surprisingly not an easy prey for that Fiend Commander of the 8th step to catch up. In the field of flight, Long Houchen was a proud disciple of the 10th Holy Guard. The use of special maneuvers, using some very difficult movements, enabled by sudden accelerations, was effective enough to outspeed the other party. On the other hand, the use of his 4 wings and his breathing enabled him to absorb some of the light essence disseminated in the air and recover spiritual energy. During the time the Fiend Commander chased after Long Houchen, Yating's spell started to show its might. Immense balls of light appeared one after another from the sky, heading straight for the core of the demons. Their aim was the group of hell demons. The suddenness of the spell, along with its power that reached the peak of the 8th step, both proved out their utilities. At the time it started to descend, even the Fiend King commanding the group looked shocked. Magic was not the same as other battle methods. It required chanting, be it for humans or demons. He never expected to be confronted so suddenly by a spell even Fiend Commanders of the 8th step couldn't do anything against, nor to be the aim of such a powerful spell. This time, the strength of a powerhouse of the 9th step was thoroughly displayed. Although the Fiend King was aware of the fact that if the Hell Demons worked together, resisting this spell would be no issue, he didn't want to take risks. In case these meteors of light reached their ranks, the damage would be catastrophic. So he immediately intervened, planning to intercept the powerful spell himself. Although the meteors of light had a restricted range, its was not limited by direction. This was a strengthened version of the spell Light Meteor used by Yating before, or rather an area-restricted version. All 9 meteors were singularly smaller than the original Light Meteor, but added up together, their explosive force was a lot greater, and their area of effect became massive. With the support from Long Houchen's spiritual energy, Yating used this offensive light spell with huge area effect exceeding her own rank. The Fiend King rushed there. The instant his body started to make its way, it lit up in a dark golden light, and the massive wings on his back spread out, flapped violently. Immediately, a huge dark golden sword appeared in his hands. This huge sword was glinting with an orange luster, unexpectedly showing its identity of darkness elemental epic tier equipment. Among demons, this kind of equipment would not even be necessarily be available to demon gods. From this, the status of this Fiend King could be deduced. The dark golden glint flashed in the air like a ray of light, and despite the massive build of the Fiend King, his movement was instantaneous, not restricted by his volume. Immediately, the first meteor falling down came to a stop, abruptly blowing up, splashing in all directions like a rain of light. But this was merely the beginning. The demons behind him only saw a figure full of awe, suddenly moving from one point to another in the air, totally unhindered. Each move of his produced a flicker of light, causing a golden meteor to come to a stop and explode. Although the air was still filled with an intense breath of light, the light essence didn't come into contact with any of the demons below. At the time the Fiend King slashed onto the last golden meteor, the whole sky was glinting in gold color. Golden Meteor's formation was a genuine great spell, aimed at a large area. Even though the Fiend King, in his capacity as powerhouse of the ninth step, managed to block it completely, he had to gasp for breath in pain after the skirmish. And in his face, none of the delight he should have from breaking this spell could be seen. On the contrary, this Fiend King looked extremely gloomy, as black as an old fry pan. That's because he came to realize that he had overlooked something. Indeed, the golden meteor's formation was broken, none of it having reached their aim. But from the successive explosions from the meteors, each of them carrying a huge amount of light essence, how could the fluctuations disseminated not be extremely intense? Light meteor wasn't so simple as a spell carrying Yating's power. It absorbed a large amount of light essence from the area, before letting it burst in the form of a tyrannical attack. It borrowed power from the might of heavens. A spell of this level would normally be likely to fail from the frantic accumulation of light energy, to say nothing about a situation where it was fired in such a short span. In other words, even if the Fiend King caused the meteors to explode, they were still not neutralized. A strong light essence surged in the sky, fluctuating, descending in magnificent shapes of microscopic specks of lights. This was an extremely destructive sea of specks of light. Of course, the Fiend King of the ninth step didn't feel any danger, but some weaker demons certainly felt the threat. At the time the storm of light essence appeared, the demons in the sky were few, but mainly composed of two groups, demon carriers and demon envoys. At the beginning, when Long Houchen and Yating were discussing this spell, they didn't actually expect it to bring much damage to the demons. His main plan was to delay the demons from crossing the mountain. With his understanding and trust in Ninth Holy Guard, he believed that he would definitely show an even more earth-shaking display than Yating afterwards, inevitably resulting in stalling for a great amount of time. Therefore, he thought of Yating's spell as a way to annihilate as many as possible of their support forces composed of the demon envoys and demon carriers. How could this be accomplished? That was the role of the Golden Meteor's formation. If Long Houchen was the Fiend King in charge of the group, what would he do? It was after putting himself in his shoes that this plan came to him. As a matter of fact, it turned out to be successful. The Fiend King really intercepted the light meteors, to prevent the hell demons below from suffering damage. But he lost in the process 2/3 of the demon envoys and demon carriers. In such a chaos formed from light essence, even the surviving demon envoys were mostly greatly wounded. And this was for the luckiest of them, who were in the periphery of the area. Propelled by the four wings on his back, Long Houchen made a turn, suddenly heading upwards, before sweeping across the Fiend Commander at his back. Immediately, his body flickered 4 times in a row, changing direction in mid-air every time, rendering the attacks of the Fiend Commander at his tracks unsuccessful. The next instant, the wings on his left side suddenly vanished, and both wings on his right side flapped with great force. It was as if Long Houchen's body went out of control, spinning round and round in the air. In the meantime as he spinned, Arya of the Goddess of Light appeared in his hand, sweeping horizontally to stab at the Fiend Commander. Don't attach too much importance to the difference of strength between the two sides. In fact, the Fiend Commander didn't have any means to catch up to Long Houchen. In the aspect of flying ability, he was lacking by a mile compared to Long Houchen. In speed of straight flight, Long Houchen's 4 wings didn't make him any inferior. And that was to say nothing of the fact Long Houchen had his numerous flying techniques. At the current time, the Fiend Commander following Long Houchen was already at the lateral side of one of the 2 mountains they were circling around, increasing their distance from the demon army. Of course, Long Houchen had been keeping tabs to the changes of the army located there. In case the demons sent powerful reinforcement against him, he would immediately prepare to return through the Tower of Eternity. However, they were obviously more preoccupied by the previous fall of meteors. The good news was that at least that for a moment, no reinforcement would come after him. As for these grand fiends, they were far from having caught up with Long Houchen and the Fiend Commander yet. Seeing the sudden attack from Long Houchen, who had been fleeing all this time, the Fiend Commander unconsciously used the heavy sword in his hand to parry Long Houchen's horizontal blow. With a tingling sound, Long Houchen changed trajectory once again in midair. From his previous spinning state, he actually borrowed force from the last block of the Fiend Commander, making his body stagnate in midair. Then a golden and a blue glow shone, resounding with a dragon cry was aimed straight at the Fiend Commander. That was one of the supreme skills Long Houchen was most proficient in, the dual dragons of light and rain, powerful offensive technique combining both offense and control in one. Long Houchen's counterattack was very sudden, at least fast enough to catch the Fiend Commander unprepared. But the Fiend Commander still deserved this title. After the first clash, against the aria of the Goddess of Light, his body came to a stop, and the heavy sword in his hand drew a circular trajectory. Accompanied with ear-splitting sounds, the sky was lit in bloody light, clashing head-on against Long Houchen's dual dragon binding of light and rain. If Kia had retained her memories and was present, she'd definitely identify that this Fiend Commander of the 8th step Long Houchen was confronted to was even more powerful than the one she killed before. The might of this fiend's bloody moon was enormous. The instant the 2 techniques clashed, the dragon cry from dual dragons of light and rain faded away, but that bloody moon was also crushed. Both Long Houchen and the Fiend Commander were astonished, because they were both confident in their techniques. The difference between the 2 was that Long Houchen had a backup plan. In the short instant following the launch of dual dragons of light and rain, Long Houchen, who was in a standstill, entered into the boundary of the sword's transparent heart. In his right hand, the aria of the Goddess of Light shifted and aimed a chop at the sky. From the significant time they spent flying, a great part of his spiritual energy was back. In particular, from the burst of dual dragons of light and rain burst, the light essence in the air increased. This was naturally a good opportunity Long Houchen wouldn't let go of. And that source of the spell being the spiritual energies of both Yating and him, the absorption was a lot faster for him. So his current spiritual energy was already half back. This was a display of the dominance of a God's chosen one. With the fact he took a few great spiritual recovery pills in addition, Long Houchen had recovered the ability to fight. After all, not many of his abilities needed him to have over 10,000 units of spiritual energy available for launch. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.